There was no warning. No gravimetric distortion. No energy buildup. No blinking lights on long-range sensors. One moment the Creel warbarge Vashkarl coasted through the silent void above the decimated colony of Delta Arcturus 4. The next moment, its hull was peeling open like tinfoil, its bridge sheared in two, crew sucked into the dark like debris caught in a silent, sudden storm. Captain Kthar didn't die. That was important. He lived long enough to see what had killed his ship. It was human. But not the kind of human the Creel had grown used to bullying across the outer rim. Not the colonists who begged with trembling hands. Not the diplomats with soft words and softer eyes. Not even the soldiers with their standardized rifles and defiant screams. This one didn't scream. He emerged from the breach with eyes like frozen tungsten and a suit that drank in the void like a vampire starved for blood. No insignia. No transmission. Just silent, purposeful motion as he walked along the fractured deck like gravity meant nothing. A reaper clad in matte black, fire glow from the vented plasma dancing off him like he was born of war itself. Kthar ordered the remaining crew to open fire. The guns heated. The rounds launched. And the human didn't even flinch. The slugs impacted with metallic shrieks but left no mark. One moment he was walking. The next he was inside the command deck, blades like curved obsidian in each hand, a blur of carnage slicing through the air, limbs and torsos torn in silence. The Creel screamed. They bled. And in minutes, there was only Kthar left, pinned to the wall, breath hitching as the human's weapon halted inches from his throat. "Why me?" Kthar croaked. The human's voice was ice. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just factual. "You live, to warn the rest." Then he was gone. The Vashkarl burned behind him, scuttled by its own drives. Kthar, alone, was recovered weeks later by a scavenger crew. Half insane. Whispering words no Creel had heard before. The Mercy Protocol. 3 months later, Galactic Council Chambers, Virex Prime. The chamber buzzed with overlapping translators. Holoscreens floated in the air, streaming live feeds of diplomatic clusters. Dozens of species, avian, silicon-based, scaled, chitin-armored, sat around the ringed gallery, each with their own posture of superiority or cautious neutrality. But today, all attention was on the central projection. A rotating image of a human warship. If you could even call it a warship. "It's not registered," Admiral Chorvak of the Valkyrie Armada clicked, his mandibles snapping with agitation. "Its design matches no known Terran fleet or variant. No transponder. No drive signature. It moved without FTL disturbance." General Vekran of the Taurin leaned forward, leathery fingers pressed together. "Are we suggesting the humans have developed a new class of ship?" "No," rasped the Zarn Syndicate ambassador, his voice like oil sliding over knives. "We're saying we have no idea what we saw. Or how it got there. Or how it annihilated 5 Creel war barges and left only one survivor." Council murmurs rose. Speculation, confusion, fear. Finally, a Terran representative stood. He wasn't a diplomat. That was unusual. His face was lined with age. His uniform plain, dark gray with only one symbol, a white circle with a single red slash through it. He looked at the council not with arrogance but with something worse, calculated intent. "My name is Marshal Elias Granger," he said, voice carrying weight without volume. "I wasn't invited here. I came because you need to understand what's about to happen." "Are you threatening the council?" hissed the Zarl envoy. Granger didn't blink. "No. I'm delivering a message. One that needs repeating." He pressed a button on a small control pad. The chamber darkened. A video feed began. Helmet cam. Human HUD. Breathing loud in the ears. An alien corridor, blood splattered. Alien screams echoing. A blade whistling through the air. A Creel officer begging. A voice calm as death itself. One left alive. Standard Mercy Protocol. Then static. Lights returned. The room was silent. Granger holstered the device. "We tried peace. We tried diplomacy. You took that as weakness. We sent ambassadors. You killed them. We sent aid. You bombed the convoys. Now we send ghosts. And they'll leave just enough of you breathing to spread the word. This is a war crime," the Valkyrie barked. "This is barbaric." Granger finally smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No. This is how you teach a predator to fear something bigger than it." He turned to walk out. A Zarn delegate called after him. "Is that all humans are now? Monsters lurking in the dark?" Granger paused. "No," he said, not looking back. "We're just tired of pretending we're not. Meanwhile, edge of the Urok expanse. The Urok hive fleet drifted toward what used to be a human colony on Epsilon N7. 12 warships, 2 dreadnoughts and a carrier pod swarm, designed to strip planets to biomass within days. They didn't even see the shadow approach. One by one their vessels blinked out. No explosions. Just gone. Hulls breached from within. Systems disabled before they could scream. And in the silence, only one ship remained. A single drone survived. Shaking. Transmitting the only thing its fried sensors could pick up. A phrase etched in plasma across the hull of the Urok Queen's dreadnought. One left alive. And below it, scratched like a cruel joke. You're welcome. 3 hours after the Urok hive annihilation, Galactic Council Emergency Session, Virex Prime. The chamber was in chaos. Counselors yelled across the ringed room in a dozen languages. Security drones hovered nervously near their assigned delegates. A translator bot shorted out under the strain of converting simultaneous rage, fear, and confusion. Even the Valksari, usually composed, snapped their mandibles in frustration. 3 hives. Gone, shouted Prime Voice Jiktor of the Urok, his towering insectoid frame quivering. No signals. No black box trails. We demand retribution. Ambassador Silan of the Zarn extended a glittering tendril toward the human seat. Empty as usual. There is no one to answer for this. Humanity doesn't deny it. But they don't confirm it either. It's ghost warfare. Marshal Elias Granger had left after the last meeting. The message was delivered. And judging by the growing body count, the council had not heeded it. Vekran of the Tauran looked over his own datapad. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled. They're not deploying fleets. Not even strike teams. These attacks are surgical. Controlled. Coordinated. Every species that has violated Terran borders is now bleeding. You mean evaporating? Bellowed Admiral Chorvak. Silan's voice lowered. No. They are bleeding. 1 ship left. 1 hive drone. 1 orbital commander. Always 1. Enough to survive. Enough to tell the tale. No one responded. That's when the newest projection arrived. The image flickered into the central feed, a transmission scraped from the surviving Urok drone. Static-laced footage. Motionless stars. Then a shape gliding through space like a manta in a current. No engines flared. No heat signature. Just darkness with edges too precise to be natural. Then came the plasma-etched message across the dreadnought's broken hull, bright enough to make the council chamber dim in comparison. 1 left alive. The chamber fell silent again. But the silence this time was heavier. It wasn't confusion now. It was realization. Meanwhile, on board the Seraphim Null high orbit over an unnamed Creel outpost. He crouched at the edge of the airlock, adjusting the seal on his helmet. The matte black of his armor shimmered for a moment before fading into the artificial gloom. His eyes, human blue calm, scanned the HUD silently as data streamed past. 17 hostiles. 0 friendlies. Objective, execute protocol. His name was listed nowhere in the database. Not on any registry. Not even Earthside. He had no rank, no unit patch. But among the humans who still remembered what he once was, he had a call sign. Nightingale. Not because he healed. Because his arrival meant someone was about to sing their last song. Target airlock will rotate in 5 seconds, the AI in his helmet whispered. He didn't reply. He didn't need to. The lock hissed. Gravity cut. And he stepped out into the void. Drifted silent. The Creel perimeter sensors didn't even register him. He landed like a shadow and passed through 2 sentries before their eyes could widen. No alarms. No blood. Just silence and then a sudden, complete lack of presence. The station interior was dim. Not from design, just failure. Systems degraded. Life support faltering. These outposts were punishment posts for the Creel. Leftovers from a failed campaign. But they had kept operating, raiding abandoned human colonies. Scavenging from mass graves. They were the next names on the list. One by one. He moved through them like a dream. By the time the outpost commander realized they were under attack, his comms were dead. His second-in-command was missing. And the lights had all turned red. The last thing he saw, scrawled into the wall in ash, was the phrase burned into every survivor's mind. 1 left alive. He ran. He escaped. He would live. And that was the point. 4 days later, aboard the Zarnian WIRM craft, Voice of Silence, the council dispatched a secret convoy to the humans. 3 delegates. White flags encoded into their sensor signatures. They approached Earth with caution. The Terran system was unnervingly quiet. No chatter. No patrols. Just emptiness. They arrived in lunar orbit without incident. And then, they saw it. A fleet. But not in the traditional sense. It wasn't parked in orbit. It wasn't shining and proud. It drifted like corpses in formation. Tens, maybe hundreds, of vessels. All different classes. No lights. No active cores. Each ship marked by the same insignia. A white circle with a single red slash. The delegate from the Zarn leaned forward. "This isn't a war fleet," she whispered. "It's a monument." To loss? No. To restraint. Because the Terrans had fleets, yes. But they weren't using them. They didn't need to. They were sending individuals. Ghosts. One at a time. Which meant this floating graveyard wasn't made of ruined ships. It was made of retired ones. A reminder, we could but we don't have to. The diplomatic ship landed on the surface of the moon. A lone man greeted them. Not Granger. Not Nightingale. Just a woman in plain fatigues. She offered no name. Only tea. Only silence. And when asked why humanity was doing this, why they weren't sending armadas, why they weren't raising cities, they got only one answer. So no one ever forgets what it costs to provoke peacekeepers. Elsewhere, scattered broadcasts across the galaxy. The Jarathi enclaves have withdrawn their claim on the Draken sector, citing fear of retribution under the so-called Human Mercy Protocol. In a surprising move, the Creel have opened negotiations for non-aggression with the Sol Confederacy, an unprecedented turn of events. Scholars now debate whether the Mercy Protocol is a form of psychological warfare, or something far worse, cultural terrorism. The surviving officer from the latest hive destruction has gone mute, repeating only one phrase: "The ghosts are watching." At the edge of known space, a beacon activates. Deep in an abandoned outpost once used by the Glar Dominion, a hidden sensor picks up a Terran ghost. The message flashes through encrypted channels and arrives in the hands of Admiral Chorvac. The final image, a Terran figure walking alone. Blade sheath. Helmet visor down. Approaching a Glar genetics facility known for experiments on human prisoners. Beneath it, a single transmitted sentence. "This one won't be left alive." Facility 19X, Glar Dominion. Deep void orbit, Sector K2-. The stars didn't twinkle here. Too far from gravity wells. No atmospheres. No light pollution. Just silence, and a darkness that devoured transmissions, radar pings, and hope. It was the kind of place chosen precisely because no one would come looking. Facility 19X existed outside the Glar's official records. It wasn't merely classified, it was disavowed. A myth even among the Dominion's own people. A place whispered of only in encrypted forums and the darker corners of the intergalactic archive. And now, something had breached it. Security Commandant Drex paced along the reinforced observation window, his gill pockets fluttering with stress. "Still nothing?" he barked. "Negative," the tech responded, his hand trembling as he typed. "No energy readings. No propulsion. Nothing. It's just walking. Through a vacuum?" "Yes, Commandant." "And you're telling me," Drex leaned close, his voice poisonous, "that it has crossed 30 kilometers of open space since we first detected it? On foot?" "Yes." Drex didn't answer. He watched. The figure advanced across the void, its silhouette against the stars. Wrong. It was too smooth. Too stable. The limbs moved with unsettling grace, each step a silent promise of arrival. He'd read the reports. "Human Mercy Protocol," he said aloud. A phrase. A terror. He turned to his second officer. "Prepare the failsafes. If they're going to kill us, they don't get to dissect us afterward." The officer paled. "Sir, you said we'd be protected here. That this place was unreachable, hidden, untouchable," Drex finished. "Yes, I believed it too." He looked back toward the window. "But now I know the truth." 16 minutes later, emergency broadcast from 19X. The message was sent on a locked frequency. Untraceable, routed through dead satellites and discarded comms buoys. A scream hurled into the dark. The Galactic Council intercepted it by accident. They played the last 60 seconds on loop, trying to make sense of the static, the gasping breaths, the distant thump of bootfalls in vacuum-sealed corridors. Then the image appeared. A single camera feed from the central laboratory. The body of Drex hung from the ceiling by a twisted length of zero-grav cabling, his eyes wide, bloodless, unblinking. Behind him, a message had been carved into the bulkhead, not with weapons. With fingertips. "Mercy is not for monsters. One scientist survived. An intern. She had been ignored. She fled in an escape pod, screaming across unfiltered channels. And just before she blacked out from shock, she said, "He didn't say anything. He just looked at us. He chose." 1. Elsewhere, the Quran hegemony capital system. The high matriarch of Quran was not prone to fear. Her species had enslaved stars. Cracked moons open for resources. Fought the Vecran over 3,000 years and won. But the reports made her shiver. Because one by one, every species that had ever tested the limits of human tolerance, of peace, of diplomacy, was now losing something they couldn't quantify. Not fleets. Not economies. But certainty. No strategic demands, her war advisors said. No planetary claims. No ceasefire negotiations. Just attacks. Precision, said another. Surgical. Like assassinations but with entire colonies. And always, one left alive. Until 19X. That was new. They had broken their own rule. The human mercy protocol had shifted. From a warning, to a judgment. And that, she realized, was worse. Because it meant the humans weren't just making statements anymore. They were making decisions. She summoned her ministers. "We will issue a formal apology to Earth," she declared. Pause. Then someone dared to ask, "For what crime?" She looked out at the blackness between stars. "For not fearing them when we should have." Meanwhile, in the Terran Core Council chambers, Luna. Granger stood at the edge of the hollow map, arms crossed, eyes distant. "We warned them," he muttered. "Elias," came a voice, General Rao, hard as carved granite. "You knew 19X would tip them." He didn't respond right away. "It was time," he said finally. "They'll see it as escalation. They're not wrong." "But it wasn't you," she pressed. "It wasn't authorized. That operator, Nightingale, they went off book." Granger stared into the dark expanse. "No, they didn't." He looked her dead in the eyes. "They were following protocol. And protocol evolves. In the outer systems, a young race watches. The Silene were newcomers. Just 80 years since first contact. Too small to colonize. Too quiet to offend. And so they watched. And learned. Their ships recorded the attack on the Jarathi gas mine. No sounds. No threats. No armies. Just a human in armor landing on the platform, walking silently through the mist, leaving the central administrator weeping beside a single white rose dipped in crimson. And then the fire. Controlled. Targeted. Minimal. But permanent. The Silene ambassador whispered to her peers, "They've learned to weaponize mercy." And she was right. No one feared Terran domination. They feared Terran restraint. Because restraint meant choice. And choice meant if they came for you, they meant it. 78 hours later, emergency council session, again. The chamber was tense. No shouting this time. Only silence. A single human representative had arrived. An AI, something old. Probably left over from one of Earth's ancient war systems. It projected no emotion. No empathy. Its voice was like winter wind on metal. Terminate aggression. Compensate loss. Leave our dead in peace. One delegate asked, "Or what?" The AI didn't blink. Didn't threaten. Just played a recording. The surviving Creel from the last outpost. Sobbing. Clawing at his face. I saw his eyes. They were human. But they weren't there. They were somewhere else, like he'd already died once and didn't care anymore. Then the feed cut. The AI turned away. Protocol escalates in 12 rotations. No one tried to stop it. Because no one knew how. 12 rotations later, on the rim of galactic space, uncharted region Zeta 59. The countdown ended without fanfare. No explosions. No dramatic declarations. Just an eerie quiet. The kind that made every admiral in the galaxy stop mid-command, unsure if they'd missed something, because they had. Protocol escalation wasn't noise. It wasn't brute force. It was surgical entropy. It began in the outskirts, former flashpoints of human resistance. Mining colonies. Medical outposts. Research arrays. Every one of them had been touched by war at some point, then rebuilt, rehabilitated, and now revisited. Not by fleets. By shadows. Reports streamed in, each more fragmented than the last. They slipped past our blockade on foot. We never saw them. We just stopped getting updates. He stood over me, said nothing, then handed me this. A single data crystal. Inside it, names, coordinates, memories, Every life lost to each species' wars against humanity. Cataloged, time-stamped, archived in perfect clarity. No demands. Just a list. And a whisper at the end of the file. You left them no choice. Council Capital, Deep Orbit, Nebula Arc 7. Panic had become routine. Delegates no longer shouted at each other. They sat frozen, their eyes flicking across transmission after transmission, each more damning than the last. The Torvac delegation had been wiped out. Not killed. Erased. Entire sectors of their history overwritten. Cultural databases scrambled. Monuments melted with precise thermal beams. Their language, targeted. Every major script rendering server reduced to silence. It wasn't destruction. It was erasure. Humanity hadn't come to kill the Torvac. They came to unmake them. Because the Torvac had once launched a child bomb into a Terran refugee fleet. Just once. 50 years ago. And the protocol never forgot. Back on Earth, Deep Archives, Terran Continuum Command. Rao met Granger in the Hall of Echoes. The room was silent, save for the slow drip of recycled condensation from the cryochamber vents. They're finally listening, she said, voice hollow. Granger stood at the interface wall, where the stories of humanity's dead were etched, each name a soft glow. Thousands. Millions. They should have listened the first time. They thought you were bluffing. He nodded slowly. We were, he admitted. She blinked. What? At first, he said. Polite mode was always a gamble. A mask. A way to pretend we could be like them, civil, detached, fair in war. But after they burned Nissa Station, after the Erothi trials, after the way they laughed during our peace talks. His jaw clenched. Polite mode died. The mask came off. And now they're seeing us, not as we wanted to be but as we are when we remember everything. Rao stared at him, understanding dawning. This was never about retribution, was it? He finally turned. No, he said. It's about memory. 3 systems away, the Vishari homeworld. The last living Vishari elder walked through the ruins of the throne complex. Alone. There were no bodies. Just silence. A single datapad sat on a carved obsidian pedestal, still glowing. She approached it slowly, her joints aching, her heart heavy. The screen showed only one word. Spared. She collapsed. Not in relief, but in terror. Because she understood what the word truly meant. They had seen everything. Weighed every horror. Every atrocity. And somehow, had chosen not to finish them. They had been spared. Which meant, they had been judged. And found insignificant. There was no redemption to chase. No penance to offer. Only shame. Across the galaxy, a new doctrine emerges. Scholars, survivors, diplomats, and even former warlords began whispering a new phrase. Not in defiance. Not in irony. But in reverence. The Mercy Protocol. It became more than just a warning. It became a principle. A galactic parable. One where vengeance wasn't painted with fire, but with memory, precision, and intentionality. The idea of leaving one survivor wasn't cruelty. Was a lesson. A final chance. An eternal witness. One who would never forget, and would never let anyone else forget either. Epilogue, Human Diplomatic Broadcast, Cycle 917.008. A human envoy, this one flesh and blood, appeared before the council alone. No weapons. No fleet. He walked into the chamber, slow and measured. His suit bore no insignia. His face was calm. I bring you a message, he said. Not a threat. Not even a warning. They watched him warily. I bring you a final truth, he said. Not because we need you to believe it, but because you need to understand it. He held up a small data sphere. On it, the names of every known aggressor species. Crossed through, one by one. Except 3. And he said, we don't need you to fear us. We need you to fear what we become when you give us no other choice. He placed the sphere on the floor, turned, and walked away. No guard stopped him. None even breathed, because they all knew. There would be no second visit. Subscribe to the Void Narratives, where humanity's legends of war, memory, and mercy echo beyond the stars. One survivor always remains, so the galaxy never forgets. Don't miss what comes next.